Yo everyone, UFC 310 just wrapped up and it was a great card with many highs and lows thrown in there. I'll be jumping into each fight on the card, sharing my thoughts on each and every fight, also offering up who I think each fighter should verse next or what each fighter's next move should be. So please sit back and enjoy the video since it was actually pretty tough putting all this together this quick. As always, if you'd like to skip to any fight in particular, timestamps will be in the comment section below, and if you like the video, please leave a like and a comment letting me know to support the channel because it does mean a lot for me as a growing channel. So without further ado, let's jump into the first fight of the card, or the first winner of the card, I should say, which was Kennedy Nzechukwu getting the win over Lukasz Brzeski by first round KO. This was a great win, just too easy for him. Showed great kicks, knees, solid hand speed, but he shouldn't have been matched up against Brzeski in the first place. He was just way too hittable, and he's just way below Kennedy's level in my opinion. He's only won one fight in the UFC, and he's versing some guy that has beaten actual ranked fighters in the light heavyweight division. It was pretty crazy matchmaking to me. Anyways, let's match them up into their future matchups. I believe that Kennedy Nzechukwu should verse Tai Tuivasa in his next matchup. I think this will be a great fight. I think Tai's on a big losing streak. Kennedy Nzechukwu has proven himself to be a very good fighter that can handle unranked or ranked fighters in the top level of each division in light heavyweight and heavyweight, so it would be pretty cool to see this matchup. I think in Lukasz Brzeski's case, I would personally rather see him go to PFL or Bellator. I just don't think he's at UFC level. He's only won one fight inside the UFC. He's been KO'd, TKO'd many times over now. I just personally don't think he's got what it takes to fight in this organization. Probably best to move on to the PFL or Bellator. Like I said about Lukasz Brzeski, this probably shouldn't have been a matchup as well. Clay Guida just looked too strange, I'll be honest, in the stand-up. He was moving very awkwardly. He couldn't handle anything at range from Chase Hooper, and when it got to the ground, Chase was just on another level. They had a grappling match prior to this, and Chase did destroy Clay Guida in that. So I really did think this would go the same way with Chase Hooper getting a finish in this fight with his submissions, and he did get the submission win. So great win for Chase Hooper. I would like to see him matched up against a higher level fighter, maybe a fighter like Matt Favola or even a Drew Dober as well would be pretty good. So that's the fighters I would like him to be matched up in the future potentially. And for Clay Guida, I feel like there's only one route that at least I prefer, and that is the retirement route. I would not like to see him fight again. He's 42 years of age. Does he really need to be fighting anymore? Unless it's for monetary reasons, I really don't think they should be fighting anymore. I don't think he is going to improve anytime soon. I would rather see him have a very nice retirement and finally rest up. Moving on to Michael Chiesa getting the third round submission win over Max Griffin. Now, this was a sloppy fight, guys. I'll be honest, I really did not enjoy watching this fight. I thought both guys were pretty low level. I did pick Max Griffin to get this one done, but he just looked like he didn't want to engage with Michael Chiesa at all. And he only started getting going towards the third round, so I felt like if he had more output from the first and second round, he might have been able to get it done against Michael Chiesa, but both guys looked pretty lost on the feet. I'm going to be honest with you. But if I did have to match them up, you know what? If I had to match them both up, I'll be honest with you, if I had to match them both up, I'd probably send them both to the retirement home. They're not at a high level anymore for the high level fighters of the UFC. They can fight lower level guys, probably really far down in the rankings, nowhere near the top 15, but I don't think they should be fighting anywhere near the rankings anytime soon. If I had to match Michael Chiesa up with anyone, I would match him up with another fighter on this card, which is Randy Brown. But like I said, I'm not super keen to watch them both fight. Max Griffin and Michael Chiesa, that's who I'm talking about, because I was pretty disappointed with the performances. Moving on to Joshua Van getting the unanimous decision win over Cody Durden. Now, this was an exciting fight to watch, and it went almost exactly like how I predicted the fight to go. I thought that Cody Durden would be sprawling and trying to get takedowns for dear life against Joshua Van, just because Van's pressure tends to snowball towards the end of the first into the second round, and he really did put a big beat down on Cody Durden in this fight. I'm surprised Durden took some of the punches he took, but he's a tough fighter. He's actually quite a good fighter, but this was just a terrible matchup to go against a Joshua Van. In terms of who I'd like to see him fight next, I would really like to see Joshua Van fight someone up in the rankings like an Alex Perez. I think this would be a great matchup. Alex Perez is coming off a loss as well, so I would like to see him fight, get a ranking there. I think he would get this one done as well. I think this is a pretty good matchup for him. And for Cody Durden, I think he showed some good toughness. He's just at the edge of the rankings. I would like him to show that he's still worthy of the ranking, somewhere around the 14th, 15th spot. by fighting a top prospect in Ramazanbek Temirov. I think this would be a crazy good fight. I think this would be a tough fight for Cody Durden as well, but he needs to prove that he still can tangle with the top-ranked guys in the division, the top 15. So this is who I'd match him up against, a top prospect for the division. Moving on to Eryk Anders getting the second round KO TKO versus Chris Weidman. Now, this was another disappointing fight, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought Chris Weidman would get this fight done, and he did rock Eryk Anders in the first round and drop him pretty badly. But I don't even know what happened in the second round. It looked like Chris Weidman just ended up giving up. He had like one knee shield place, so he had it like a knee to belly of Eryk Anders as he was on bottom position. And he just looked like he wanted to stay in bottom position the whole time, did not try to move or get out of that position, change position, try to return to full guard. He just stayed there and let Eryk Anders beat on him until the ref stopped the fight. He was surprised they stopped the fight as well. He was beating on him for about 3 minutes. 3.5 minutes almost, I think. But yeah, good win for Eryk Anders, I guess, but I was just disappointed in Chris Weidman's performance. If I'd like to see him fight anyone else, I think he should fight someone up the rankings like a Paul Craig. I think this would be a pretty good fight for him to get another win. I honestly think he would beat Paul Craig at this point, unless he gets submitted, of course, but you never know in some fights. And as for Chris Weidman, after seeing what looked like him giving up in that round, I would really rather him probably retire as well. You're going to see this retirement picture a lot in these videos, just because I would probably prefer a lot of fighters end up retiring than fight again if their performance is that bad and if they are an older fighter in general. So I don't want to match him up against anyone. I'd rather him retire, rest up. This was a pretty bad performance as well against a fighter that he probably should have beaten as well. But moving on, regardless, we're going to go to Bryan Battle, getting the split decision win over Randy Brown. Arguable split decision win. A lot of people thought it was a Randy Brown win. It was a robbery. I'm going to say that I need to watch this fight back. I'm not too sure. I thought Bryan Battle might have scraped by a decision win, a split decision win. I had money on Randy Brown to win this fight. I was really keen for Randy Brown to get this one done. I did put him as a big underdog into my confident picks list because I thought he would get this one done. I thought that Bryan Battle would have to clinch up with him. I thought he wouldn't be able to get any takedowns, and I thought that Randy Brown would be able to do more damage on the outside. And I was actually in the right in this fight. And I was surprised everything was going well, but Randy Brown just didn't have enough output, especially in the later rounds of this fight, and that's what made me end up leaning towards Bryan Battle. But if you can't do anything with some control with your grappling, then should you really be winning the fight? This was pretty boring, not going to lie to you, but if I had to match up Bryan Battle into a future matchup, I would give him someone like Vicente Luque. I think this would be a good fight. Another fighter that was on this card. I would really like to see this fight take place. I think Vicente would win this fight, I'll be honest with you, but you never know. So I would love to see this fight take place. And for Randy Brown himself, I would give him Michael Chiesa, which is what we've already talked about before. I think it's slightly below him in ranking, and Michael Chiesa got the win, so would like to see this fight. I think Randy Brown would get this one done, but that's just my quick prediction. Moving on to Movsar Evloev getting the unanimous decision win over Aljomain Sterling. This was a crazy good fight. I don't care what anyone says. The grappling exchanges were very entertaining to watch. I really did enjoy watching this fight. I thought Aljo did way better than I thought he would, and I think he did a lot better than a lot of people thought he would. He was able to take down Movsar Evloev many times in this fight. I think his takedowns was around 4 to 5 takedowns in this fight in total. He did great securing them, but he just couldn't secure too many dominant positions over Movsar Evloev after getting the takedown. So Movsar was able to get the better positions, was able to probably do more damage in this fight, able to get more strikes off, and I think that's what carried him over to getting the 2 rounds over Aljomain Sterling in this fight. Would have loved to see 5 rounds between these guys, but nonetheless, great win for Movsar Evloev. As for who I think Movsar should take on next, I think he should take on the champion, Ilia Topuria, or whoever holds the belt by the time Movsar is ready to challenge it. I think he's done enough to deserve a title shot at this point in his career. So whoever holds the belt, whether it be Ilia Topuria, maybe a Diego Lopez, I think he deserves that title shot by now. And as for Aljomain Sterling, this sort of leaves him in an awkward position. I think he fought really well, but he does have a win over Calvin Kattar, who is pretty high in the division, so I think I would match him up against someone like a Bryan Ortega. I think this would be a great fight. I think they could promote this fight as a grappler v grappler matchup again. Wouldn't mind seeing these guys versus each other. Moving on to Vicente Luque getting the first round submission win over Themba Gorimbo. Now, this was a fight that came out of literal nowhere. I was super excited for Vicente Luque to get the win in this one. Definitely a little bit sad with the Themba Gorimbo pick, but you can't win them all. I did say in my predictions video that I wouldn't be putting any bets on this fight because I really did think that this was a bad matchup for Themba Gorimbo, but I didn't think it would end like this. Like a first round submission, Anaconda Dash choke was crazy to see. I think because of such a good win, I would like to see him versus someone just outside the rankings, just because at the bottom of the rankings, there's a few people that have already beaten Vicente Luque at this point in his career, like a Jeff Neal. I would like him to versus another person that was on this card in Bryan Battle. I think Bryan Battle really needs to prove he's ready for the division, at least the top level of the division, the top 15. So I want to see if he can get past Vicente Luque. Just like I mentioned in the Bryan Battle pick, that's who I want to see him fight. As for Themba Gorimbo, really sad for him. This was a high-level fight that he was a favorite in, but unfortunate, these things happen. I would like to see him match up against someone that might be a good fight for him in a Santiago Ponzinibbio. I think this would be a great fight. I would love to see this fight, honestly. And I think this would be a good bounce back for him because I think he would do quite well against Santiago Ponzinibbio, in my opinion. So moving on to Dominick Reyes getting the second round KO TKO against Anthony Smith. Now, I'm super happy that Dominick Reyes is back in his winning ways. I am a big fan of Dominick Reyes, and I hope he does well. I think Anthony Smith was definitely in his emotions in this fight. You hate to see fighters go through a bit of heartbreak or lose a loved one. So best wishes out to him, but definitely didn't look like he wanted to be in the octagon with Dominick Reyes. Basically just got beaten for a round and a half until they called off the fight there. As for who I'd like to see Dominick Reyes fight in the future, I would like to see him match up against someone like Johnny Walker. I think this would be a good fight to get him into the top 10, top 15 of the division. And I think this is a clearly winnable fight for him to keep him onto a 3-fight win streak. And as for Anthony Smith, I hope he sticks with that choice to go into retirement because he deserves it. He's fought so many fights in the UFC. He's fought for so long, and he just doesn't need to fight anymore. Like, it's going to take a long time to get to the title. Is it really worth it? And can you really do it? Those are the questions you have to ask yourself. So I would rather him retire, relax up, because the fight game is a tough game, guys. Moving on to Doo Ho Choi getting the second round KO over Nate the Train. Now, guys, I'm pretty happy with this Doo Ho Choi pick. I've picked Doo Ho Choi as an underdog 2 times in a row now, and he's got it done 2 times in a row. So super happy with this pick. He really did just beat Nate Landwehr into the ground the whole fight. Did everything, out-wrestled him, out-striked him on the feet, beat him pillar to post everywhere in this fight. And I would like to see Doo Ho Choi versus someone like Edson Barbosa, someone up in the bottom part of the rankings that I think he should verse. I think this would be a great fight. There are other fighters in there that I would like him to verse too, but I think this fight in particular would be pretty cool to see. And as for Nate Landwehr, I think I would like to see him verse like Andre Philly. I think this would be someone around his ranking as well. That would make for a pretty interesting fight. I think he might be able to win this fight with his grappling too, so would love to see these guys match up. They're both interesting characters. So now moving on to Bryce Mitchell getting the third round KO TKO over Kron Gracie. Now guys, this fight should have never happened in the first place. I don't even know why Kron Gracie got this chance against Bryce Mitchell. The guy's lost 2 fights against unranked fighters, and then all of a sudden he gets a ranked fight against a ranked fighter, and is now on the main card as well, over like an Evloev and Aljomain Sterling. It was pretty ludicrous. He looked really awful in this fight. Almost got a submission win over Bryce Mitchell at one point though, so there was some excitement there, but he really is not UFC level, and Bryce Mitchell really did show that by elbowing him into the canvas. It was a crazy win. Great win for Bryce Mitchell. As for who I'd like to see him verse next, I think he should verse someone like a Calvin Kattar, because Bryce Mitchell has either beaten a lot of the guys surrounding him in the rankings, or he's lost to a couple of the guys in the rankings. So I would like to see him verse Calvin Kattar, who's just a couple steps up. As for Kron Gracie, easy pick. Send him to the PFL or Bellator. I don't want to see this guy in the UFC anymore. Really uninteresting fight style. He could even just go and do grappling, I'll be honest with you. I think he's a pretty good grappler, but just definitely not a UFC caliber fighter. And yeah, should go to a different organization for sure. I was really disappointed with his performance. So moving on to Cyril Gane getting the split decision win over Alexander Volkov. Now this fight has a lot of controversy around it. I thought Alexander Volkov probably did enough in the moment. I thought the first 2 rounds were pretty close, in my opinion. I'd probably need to watch it back, but I thought the first 2 rounds were pretty close, and the third round was a clear Volkov round. So, yeah, a bit unsure, but I was leaning towards Volkov, so a little bit upset for him. Happy I got the pick right as well, but you're not happy because it just feels like a bit of a robbery. As for who Cyril should fight next, since he did get this win over Alexander Volkov, realistically, he should fight the winner of John Jones and Tom Aspinall. This was definitely a number 1 contender fight, so definitely should fight the champion of the division. And as for Alexander Volkov, it's disappointing, but who does he fight? He's beaten the number 4 guy. He's beaten a lot of guys in the division. He was on a 5-fight win streak, and he arguably won this fight, so it's pretty hard. I think we should give him the rematch with Curtis Blades. I think that would be a good matchup for him, since he could get this fight back, get a win, and potentially be 1 to 2 wins away from a title shot again. So I think that's probably the perfect matchup for him at this time. I don't think you would match him up against anyone else in the division. I don't think anyone would be worth it for him. So that's that pick. Moving on to Shavkat Rakhmonov getting the unanimous decision win over Ian Garry. I think this was a pretty exciting fight. I thought that Shavkat definitely showed some holes in his game. I thought that Ian Garry definitely showed some holes in his game, but also showed some great things about his game. Showed some great takedown defense, showed his own ability to scramble and get good positions in the grappling. I thought Shavkat really showed a bigger weakness in the fact that he struggles to get people to the ground without relying on mostly brute strength or trips. I think in terms of like single legs or double legs, he sort of struggles to get people to the ground. This was something I already pointed out, but it's become more apparent in this fight with Ian Garry. So great performance. I think it was a clear win. I think he arguably won 3 to 4 rounds of this fight. I think he won rounds 1, 2, and 4 pretty clearly. And then Ian won 3 and 5. As for who's next for Shavkat Rakhmonov, it's got to be Belal Muhammad. They pulled him into the octagon to have the face-off. Like to see this fight. Once Belal is healed, I think this is the matchup to make, definitely. He deserves it. And I honestly, at this point, after watching Shavkat versus Ian Garry, I don't know who would win. I might end up favoring Belal Muhammad to get this one done because this was just too close for my liking against Ian Garry, who a lot of people thought he would end up ragdolling in this fight. So that's that pick. But in regards to Ian Garry, who I'd like to see him fight next, ideally, a great matchup for him would be a Leon Edwards. I would love to see that fight. It's only because Colby Covington has ducked Ian Garry and is now fighting Joaquin Buckley in a main event of a fight night. So that's the matchup I would make. But the matchup that I think they will give him is against a Gilbert Burns. I think this would still be a great fight. I think this is a fight that Ian Garry would probably win as well. But I just think this was the more likely matchup that they'll give Ian Garry, not Leon Edwards, because Leon Edwards is right at the top of the division. So those are the matchups I want to see. And moving on to the last fight of the card and the main event, Alexandre Pantoja getting the second round submission win over Kai Asakura. Now guys, this was a hectic fight while it lasted. Props to Kai Asakura for trying to make this entertaining, but he just got beat down in this fight. He got shut down pretty much everywhere. I've never seen Pantoja be as successful with getting so many hooks. He really did crack Kai Asakura many times, but Kai did land a couple of big shots on Pantoja, which is worrying, but the guy just eats it like they're nothing. He landed a big knee in the first round that I was just surprised that Pantoja just shook off like it was nothing, but he's just too good for a lot of these guys. He was too good for Kai Asakura. I would like to see, ideally, Alexandre Pantoja versus the winner of Umar Nurmagomedov and Merab Dvalishvili. I think he should move up a division and fight those guys. I think he's beaten a lot of contenders in his own division, and if anyone deserves to move up a division and fight the champ above, it is Alexandre Pantoja. So would love to see this fight. I think this would be a way more interesting fight than him fighting someone like a Kai Kara France at this point. Please make that matchup the UFC. And as for Kai Asakura, I think an interesting matchup for him would be against Manel Kape, someone in the rankings, but down the rankings for sure, who lost their last fight. I think this would be a great fight to make. I think they could promote this fight with the history between the two. I think they're 1-1 because they fought outside of the UFC, so they could promote this as sort of like a grudge match. I would like to see the build up to this fight. They could make hype around this fight. Please make this matchup. It would be an interesting matchup. That's the last fight to matchmake, and that's the end of the UFC 310 Pantoja vs Asakura recap and matchmaking video for you guys. So thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a like and a comment letting me know. I really do appreciate it. Show support for the channel. And yeah guys, thanks for watching again, and see you guys next time.